Welcome to the Room of Lives. I'm your host, Neil. Today's guest, Idan Yarom, served as a military reporter in the Israeli Defense Forces, then worked at the Tel Aviv Institute on National Security. He then set off on a long journey through Southeast Asia when I met him as I was backpacking across Thailand. In this first part of the conversation, he shares his experiences of working with the Israeli military and provides a recent history of Israel and Palestine. If you're interested in this topic, you can also check out episode 7.2, where our guest Pace Davis shares his experience of going to Palestine as part of their solidarity movement, which might give you a different perspective on the situation. All right, cool. So, let's start a little bit with like a sort of brief-ish life story. So like childhood, upbringing, family life, and what have you sort of done so far in your life? Travel, work, things like that.
Okay.
Just to get a sort of introduction to who we are dealing with.
To introduce myself, like with name and everything?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm Idan Yarom. I am from Israel. I was born in the city of, I was born in Tel Aviv. And later on I moved to like a city near Tel Aviv. And then after like 5 years, I moved to more suburban life. Mm-hmm. Then I moved from like one city to another, and then like most of my life was suburban life, like in one place and in one high school, like from so like in Israel it's elementary school, it's like from first grade, like from year 6 until 6th grade. And the 6th grade, it's like it's starting to have the bat mitzvahs. It's like you have bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah. So bat mitzvah is like they didn't have anything for the girls pretty much, so they made up something for the girls, so it's called bat mitzvah. Like they don't do anything religiously or something like this. It's just just party for being 12, something like this. And and then we got middle school. It's like from 12 to 15. Mm-hmm. And then high school is like from 15 to 18. Yeah, so I've been in like my middle school and high school was the same. There I met my friends who I'm friends with still this day. And actually I really, really appreciate them, like especially after that I traveled so much that like once you go out then you appreciate what you had back at home, Yeah. So I really appreciate them because we're really open about a lot of stuff. Like when I was talking to other people, and especially like groups of boys, lots of the time boys don't talk about their feeling, or if they're feeling something they don't like to share it because they'll be embarrassed if people make fun of them or whatever. But like my friends and I, we are like, no, if you want something to sort out, if you have something on your chest, you have to say it, because if not, it will just go south from there, So this is why I really like my friend. Of course, we have a lot of things in common. And we have the same humor, like we're interested in a lot of stuff, but again, like it's a very, very safe environment. So this was my high school experience. And also in Israel, like from my personal perspective and like what I talk with a lot of people, there isn't that much of like any other school. Of course, you got hierarchies and like popular kids and unpopular kids, but usually people go together. Like there is no like the class bully and the class nerd that like he shoved him or stuff like this, It's like it's pretty much chill. And actually it's a very interesting thing that in when you're 17, like a sophomore I think it's called, so you go do with all your like grade, I think, like not your class but all the class that is your age, so you go to do a trip called Israeli journey, something like this. It's called Masai Israeli. Mm-hmm. Then they take a lot of groups from within, like you can choose like 4 of your friends, and they put you with people that you not necessarily ever talk to, and like they mixing up all the class. So like the nerds will be with the popular, and the pretty girls will be with the I don't know, like everybody is mixed. And then you travel for a week, and actually really after this week you really saw like everybody's changed in a way that like there were so many new bonds. It was really, really interesting. So I'm saying like this is a really cool experience to do for kids, and I liked it very much, and I remember it like really, really fondly and good.
So, by the way,
Yes.
This might be a dumb question. In your school, is it like all pretty much Jewish kids, or are
Yeah.
there any? Like,
So the thing is,
so it's pretty segregated, the school system.
it's very segregated by choice. I mean, like every other place, like usually people live with their own, like if you go to New York and you have Chinatown or Little Italy or whatever, it's because immigrants came to the same place because they have, they're the same people. So like, it's not that you don't choose to. Some people don't choose to go together, but like Arabs usually have their own villages, and Jewish have their own like settlements or cities, whatever, however you call it, in mixed
By the way,
cities.
could you tilt the webcam up a little bit? Cause
in mixed cities like Haifa or Jaffa, like Yafo, you have like mixed school, and also it's there's people really against it, there are people really into it, but usually it's like the majority here is Jewish, and like when you're a Jew, mostly you would just have Jewish friends, and you would just have Jewish like neighbors and stuff like this. Only in some places you have, but when you do live like inside of Israel, when you do have like neighboring Arabs and stuff like this, so usually I actually talked with a friend yesterday. Nobody gives a fuck pretty much, like in those places. Like in the West Bank, it's other stuff, but I'm saying like in Israel, like if it's Haifa, Yafo, Akko, it's Accra, I think it's called. I don't remember how it's called in English, but so there just people live by like side by side. They have restaurants near each other, like neighborhood near each other. So there is more mixing, but like in the general, it's Jewish in Jewish school and Arabs in Arab school.
Yeah. Okay, so like continuing back on your
and when
story.
It is an Israeli, when you're 17, you get a thing called the first degree, and this is like your first summoning to the military. Then they're doing like all sort of tests. If it's like physiological test, if it's IQ test, psychologically test to see like if you're qualified to hold the gun, pretty much, and to see if like you're mentally stable, And this is when you're 17, and up like on what you get, like the scores you get, this is like kind of where you're gonna get in the military and stuff like this. The problem, a lot of problem with the psychology thing is that, and it's actually happened not only in Israel, it's happened in a lot of other countries that like have to do military service. If something has to be done, there is always going to be people who want to avoid it, So there is a lot of lying in the system. Like people come and say they're not like mentally stable and all that stuff, and they're perfectly out. They just don't want to go to the military for like 3 years. So the problem is that like those systems become very, very skeptical, and they always thinking that you're lying, And if you do have something, then they don't know if you just have it or you're a really good actor, And then shit can goes down. But for me, it was fine. I got into the IDF. The IDF is like the Israel Defense Force of a spokesperson unit. And you do like basic training. Like there is sort of training, like there is like combat training and there is like basic training. And it's like really, it's a month, something like this, and you shoot some guns, but something very, very basic. Like it's not, it doesn't prepare you really to be a combat unit, just like to be a basic soldier. And after this, you do like a course for 2 months that like they're teaching you about media, what is like, how to how to have a good eye for like a good scoop, a good article, you know, like how to find this stuff. Like they teach you a lot. This is like really something that I appreciate. They teach you a lot of like doing stuff by yourself, and like if you don't do it, it won't be done. You know, don't leave things for like other people to do it. You have to do it by yourself, and this is a really really good lesson. That like I can see it in my entire service. I saw this lesson like come to life. And I see it like here also, so it's crazy. And so like I did the 2 months, and after the 2 months, like they divide you like you go to work with newspapers, you go to work with radios, you go to work with TV, and I got to work in the digital segment, which it was very cool.
So like, what does it mean to be in the spokesperson unit of the Israel Defense Forces? Like, is this like news from Israel Defense that everyone else is supposed to know, or it's like a spokesperson for the military? Or...
Yeah. So think about it, like every organization in the world has spokespersons, like even like the United States Army, the Indian Army, everybody has it. You have to, it's PR pretty much, you know?
Yeah.
And the PR is divided to two, kind of, let's say. But the first thing is just like making PR, making like, you know, we look good and cool and blah, 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 making it look like appealing, you know? And the other one is like in emergency, if something happens. So first of all, today, because of there's so much media, and like so many media channels, like old media, and then there's new media. It's not very new already, but just like the Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff, fake news can like, it's like, you know, like wildfire. So it's like, this is one of the tools that the IDF has to like fight against, first of all, fake news, and to show our narrative in the world, you know, like every side has a narrative, so like you have to show it by yourself. And from working back there, that's really, I can tell you that they're really putting emphasis of like telling the truth in a way. Of course, like truth can be like, you know, in the beholder eye, but I'm saying like in the way, in the media, you have like a balance you always need to keep between being like fast and telling the truth. Because you always want to be the first one who's tell the news, you know? You always want to be, because this is your scoop, and then everybody follows you, and then like, this is like, the BBC said blah, 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 and then like it's on Fox, CNN, blah, 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 and they said the BBC found it, you know? So you always want to be first. But the thing is, you always want to be right, and like telling the truth, because you don't want to spread lies, you know? But the thing is, if you make your stay, like take too much time of like seeing everything is okay, somebody can take your scoop. But if you said your scoop like the fastest and didn't check your resources and really check like the sources that like gave you the scoop, and it's turned out to be a lie, then it's like it's on you, you know, and like you spread fake news or like half the story or whatever. So the thing is that we try our best. I said we are not there anymore, but like I know they try their best to always like, they want to be fast, but they're really important to them to say the truths, like with the numbers and like the people, and see like to know what really happened, and only then after publish it to the world. Of course they make mistakes like everybody, but I know they're really trying their best. So I was in the digital units. It's a very, very cool, like I really can't complain too much about my job in the military. There's a lot of people who complain, but like my job was really, really good. What I did pretty much was just like touring around Israel, like on my own. Just me taking buses to wherever, and then go to some random base and just ask people questions pretty much, and like to see and find, like a reporter, you know. Sometimes I get like a cool scoop from like another spokesperson who works in the unit, but like I really moved around a lot and explored and see and talk to people. And it was very, very interesting. Like I was always amazed that like everywhere you got a story, really everywhere, always you're finding stories. And I found the craziest story just like from nothing, just for asking like 2 questions. And I met some guys, you know. I met a guy who came from, he's a Jewish. He came from Argentina just to join the military. This is like not that unique. This happens a lot, but then he went into one of the not Supreme, how it's called. He went into one of the elite combat unit, and during the process, after almost a year, they found out he was really much in pain. But like it's normal to be in pain because you're doing like a really tough military like training, but he was like extra pain. And then he went to some doctors and and like apparently he had like a rare condition of like his muscles are very, very, I don't remember the name of the disease, but like his muscles are like 10 times more like hurts than like the other soldiers, you know? And he went through a year of this training, and then the doctor tell him like he can't do it anymore, and like he need to like switch job and like just be in like an office or something. He do it and got really depressed, and he said, fuck it, I don't care, I want to do it again. Then he started again the training after he knows he has his condition, you know? And I filmed it like in the last week or two, and I went to, it's called the Masakumta. It's like after you finish all the training, you do like one last journey, I think it's called, I don't know what it's called. Just like when you climb out the mountain with all the gear and everybody's like in the morning, and then after this, like you get a pin and you get like a special beret, and this like meaning that's it, you pass the test and like you're part of the unit. And it was crazy, you know, because this guy was suffering from like an illness of like pain, and he did like really, really extreme military training. And this is like one of the people just I met, you know, just like heard his story and like got the opportunity to film it and make it a video. And it was very, very cool.
I see. Cool. Yeah.
And after I finished my service, so I finished it in December 2019. And then we all know what happened in 2020. So, and especially for me, it was a little bit, I got off like 4 months before COVID starts. And because of like bureaucracy stuff, I didn't get any payment for the government because I didn't have enough months of work, something like bureaucracy, you know, and I didn't get any money out of the government, and I had no job and nothing because it was after COVID. But then I started working for my friend. He opened like a drop shipping like business, but like it was very wide. We will like how it's called, design a lot of websites and a lot of products. It's really interesting. But then this is really what was an interesting job that I did. I worked for the Tel Aviv University. They have an institute for like for national security, and because of Israel, it has a lot of national security threats. So like it's really, really interesting to hear that from them. And it's called the INSS, and it's from the Tel Aviv University. And the thing is really the leading institute in Israel that do this type of stuff. And also like the biggest names in like Israeli security are there. So like there was like the last head of chief of staff, I don't remember how it's called in English, but like the general who like like the general who is on the top of the military. So like when he finishes military service, so he joined there, you know. And I was sitting in a room with him, and he explained me about like Syria and Iran, and I got a lot of like information from really, really interesting people, and I got to work with, and like it expanded my mind like 10 times, you know, like to hear from people who understand, who like work in this for years, and like also besides study, there really was the people who like did it, you know, actively, because there was a lot of people in the military. So it was really, really interesting. Then I worked for a year there. And the thing is, I want to like a little bit say about this institute. It's generally in those institutes, so it's divided between, I don't know how it's with other fields, but in security wise, it's like, it's divided into two. So the first people are like academics, people who like learn in the university, like they are doctorates or like second degrees or whatever. Like they study, their field is like Middle East, Africa, I don't know, like Islam, a lot of like those things, you know. And the other side of it is an ex-military officers. And when I'm saying officer, is like high-ranked officers who like really took a part in the strategy of like the IDF itself. And the combination of these two is like from the academic and the people who actually did it, you know, they have a lot of knowledge to contribute to this institution. And then the purpose is to make three things. First of all, is they like to make policies and like from their experiences, and then they're offering it to like credit free, you know, to like to the government. They're saying this is what we think you should do about the Palestinian, about the Iranian nuclear, or like with the American relationship, whatever, you know, you name the topics. So this is, they hand it to them. If the policymaker like this idea, they take it. If they don't, they don't. But if they take it, it's like copyright free, you know, don't even mention it, just take it, you know.
Yeah.
This is one thing. The other thing is like to make an influence on the public, to like make awareness of these topics, because it's like really like hardcore topics, and like it's not that easy, but like it's good that the people know it, you know. And the third one is like to work in a diplomacy between like other institutes in other countries. Let's say like 2 years ago, there was the Abraham Accords that they made peace with the United Arab Emirates, and they have also an institute like this. So like it was the first year that like they made this new relationship between and like those institutes working together. So like it's really, really interesting to see it with your own eyes. So after this, I worked there for a year, and after a year, I started traveling.
Okay, so I want to switch gears a little bit now, and
okay, we don't have that much time because I have like 15 other minutes.
You have 15 minutes?
Yes, because I have to go to work.
Okay. So, maybe in these 15 minutes, you could give me a little bit of a summary of what life is like in Israel, particularly in the context of the conflict with Palestine and the history.
Okay. I will go in like present day. I will start there. So first of all, like this past decade, even though something does happen, like we do have some like every once in a while, like a rocket barrage, and then like it's exchange fire between us and Gaza. And in the West Bank, almost every day there is like not terror attacks, but like in our FBI, it's called Shin Bet, like Shabak. So like they neutralizing this stuff. So there is an everyday terrorist attack, but like this last decade was one of the most, if not the most safest decades of Israeli security-wise, you know? The thing is that because of this, it's make you think way less about the conflict because you don't feel it in your life, your daily life anymore, you know? Let's say from 2019, we had, I think, 5 elections, if I'm not wrong. I don't know if it was 4 or 5, I really stopped counting at some point. It's ridiculous. But we had we have like a really big problem with like political stability, and there is a lot of elections. And almost on all these elections, the Palestinian subject would never, like it was really on the borders, you know, it wasn't the central thing anymore. It used to be really on the central thing anymore. But like it feel like people a lot of got over it because they don't see it in their eyes anymore, because it's become way, way safer, you know, for Israelis. So this is one thing from the present day. And the thing is that how did we get to this day? Of course, it's complicated, and it's from a lot of history, but let's say I want to start with 1948, but you do have to start a little bit before that. So like it's called Aliyah Rishona. It's mean like the first, I don't know how to say it in English, like the first pilgrimage of Jewish that came to Israel. And they came in the late 19th century, before the land of Israel was exist and everything like this. But also there was always a small minority of Jewish population inside of Israel, like in Palestine it was called. So there was always like population there. In Jerusalem, in Tzfat, in Tveria, it's like holy cities for Jewish people. So there was always like some sort of like Jewish population there. But then people start, like other Jewish people start coming from all over the world, mostly from Europe at this time. But the thing is, I learned it actually like not long ago. But also there were other Arabs who came from neighboring country to Israel itself because pilgrimage, so like they also moved because the Jews started to like build more up the country, so they had like more opportunities. So other people start also drawing in. The numbers are not quite clear, so I don't want to say any numbers. There is I saw like some researchers say this, some say this, but the majority of this land, who's called Palestine, was Muslim, and there was Jewish minority, and also they came other Jewish people. So this from like the late 19th century until 1948. In 1947, there was also clashes between like the Muslim and the Jewish population before Israel was even founded. Like it's in 1929 in Hebron there was like terror attacks and blah blah blah. So even before the land of Israel, they weren't always like going hand by hand and like good neighbors and stuff like this.
Yeah.
And then in 1947, the UN after the Second World War, all the empires, like the European empires, didn't have any money left, So like London was in ruin and Paris was like after the Nazi occupied them. So like all these people, like all these countries didn't have any money left and resources to continue and occupying their colonies, So let's say India and Israel, so like India Independence Day was like in 1947 and us was 48, So at around the same time they left because they need to take care of their own and they didn't have any money left. It's not because there was just nice people and said like, yes, because all the suffering want to give them free state. No, it's bullshit. Just didn't have money to do it or resources, so they have to give it back, And then there was a UN committee in 47 that says, let's split the country into two. 55% will go to the Jews and 45% will go to the Arabs. They were called Arabs back then because the term Palestinian was not invented yet. The term Palestinian was only invented by Yasser Arafat in 1960 something. I'm not really sure the exact year, but it was 1960 something, and I think it was in Cairo. And also Arafat itself is the leader of the PLO, the one who founded it. He was born in Cairo, he's not even born in Palestine, so it's really funny. But so they decided to divide the land into two. 55% to the Jews, they were the minority. And remember, like, if you look at it from the Arab perspective, why should the minority get 55%? It's like, why? And the 45% should go to the Arabs, and Jerusalem is international space that like is not to anybody. It's just like for all of us, and like the UN is supposed to guard it. The Israelites, like the Jews, said yes to this deal, and the Arabs said no. And from when it was announced until the Brits left, so like they kept it cool. And once the Brits left, it was in 1948, in May. So the first thing that they did, once the last British soldier left, the Jews declared the independence of Israel, and they declared that this is the new founding country of Israel. At the exact same moment, all the Arab countries said, fuck this shit, let's destroy Israel, and then you will give all this land to the Palestinians, to the Arabs who live there. It wasn't called Palestinians yet. Yeah. So it was the Arab who lived in this country, and there was the Arabs who from the surrounded countries, that is Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, and Egypt, and they were founded by Saudi Arabia and Iraq, and they also had one battalion of just Muslims from around the world They just come to fight this jihad war. Because jihad, the purpose of it is not just to kill yourself or blow up. It's just like fighting an Islamic war in a way to like make liberating a land that was colonized that would belong to Islam and should be Islam again. This is what the purpose of jihad. So like they were head of battalion just for this. Blah blah blah. At the end, after like a year, Israel won, and then we conquered. After the war, so we conquered the other percentage that was supposed to go to the Arabs, except we didn't conquer the Golan Heights, we didn't conquer the West Bank and Gaza. And then this is something that like when I was talking with people about this conflict, I asked them, why did the Arabs, not the Palestinians, but the Arabs, there is the West Bank and Gaza. This is the two-state solution that like is recognized from the world, We occupied it at 1967. But from 1948 till 67, who was in charge of these places? It wasn't Israel, because we only conquered it from 67 and we were founded in 48. So there is a 20-year gap, like 19-year gap, that the West Bank was Jordan's and Gaza was Egypt's. And if this is the two-state solution that we talk about today, why didn't they give it back then to the Palestinians themselves, My point of view is they like the Arab countries use the Palestinian as like a cynical card of like in a big geopolitical game, There is a lot of troubling human conditions and like corruption and I don't know what, like wars in the Middle East, Go to any country, it's pretty much crazy. If it's Syria, Iraq, if it's Lebanon, if it's in North Africa, but if it's Libya, Yemen, you go wherever you want, There is a lot of chaos in the Middle East, and they use this Palestinian card to draw the attention from them to this conflict. Because it's easier for them. If you go right now on Google and write down what is the Middle East crisis, you will see Israel versus Palestinian or Israel versus the Arab world. In all this time, I don't want to say numbers because I didn't check it, so I didn't check it in a while, so I don't want to say exactly the numbers. But I don't think the people died in this, like in the Palestinian-Israel conflict, let's say more than 50,000 people, and I think I'm exaggerating, in the 70 years. If you go to Syria from 2011 to 2022, or let's say 2020, because this is pretty much when it's over, 1 million people died, And in Iraq, I don't know how many people died. And in Yemen, this is one of the most horrible places to live right now on planet Earth, like from the UN. That's what the UN says, So I think they use this as like a cynical card of a big geopolitical game. So from 67, there was a war, the 6-Day War. It started from Egypt was the leader of the coalition against Israel, and they moved their tanks into the Sinai Peninsula, which is like has a border with Israel, and they did a blockade with the Red Sea. Pretty much, this is mean war, And Israel did some crazy tactics, and like they did something really remarkable with like flying like 3 planes really close to each other in a really low altitude, and then they bombed the Egyptian Air Force and they completely annihilated it.
Actually,
and then,
interestingly, the same guy that I mentioned with the dating stuff, he himself a few days ago was telling me about this operation.
Oh, okay. So it's really this one what brought Israel to the status of today, because it's the 6-Day War, and we came out the most badass people. Like we fucking like fucked up like 4 countries in 6 days. We completely won, and like triple our size. So we got the Sinai Peninsula, we got the West Bank, and we got the Golan Heights we got the Sinai Peninsula and Gaza from Egypt, we got the West Bank from Jordan, and we got Syria. We got the Golan Heights from Syria. And then there was also like continuous of war between Israel and the Arab world. In 73, there was a really big war. It's called the Yom Kippur War. Yom Kippur is like a holiday in Israel, and it's the most holiest day. It's a day that like we fast for 25 hours and like don't do work, just go to like the temple and blah blah blah, and like don't use electricity, don't use nothing. And the people, like the government.
I've actually done that fast.
Oh.
Because there was a Jewish girl in the co-op where I lived who used to take me to Shabbat, to her rabbi's house.
The Kiddush.
Yeah, she was also going to do the Yom Kippur 25-hour fast. And I said, okay, I'm going to do it as well because I've never fasted in my life. I want to see what it's like. And I maintained that 25-hour fast. She could not.
How was it, the 25 hours?
It was interesting. I started becoming aware of all of my subconscious impulses to just go for the fridge.
Yes.
Whenever my mind is a little bit empty, I'll just go for the fridge and like,
exactly.
Oh. And now it is floating up to my consciousness because I have to be like, nope. So, yeah.
When you're bored, especially when you're bored, you become hungry, because you don't have anything to do. You want to keep yourself busy. It's like, it's your instinct to just like, I'm bored, let's open up the fridge. And then like, oh, you can do it, So because the 6-day war, the Israeli government was like really proud of herself and like said, haha, nothing can surprise us anymore. We win, we are inevitable, we're invincible, And it was really, they didn't look into that much detail. And then the Egyptian attacked them like once again. But at the end, we won the war. Again, it's like they hit us really bad, but then we won the war. But then 4 years later was like a really a big political change in Israel. From 48 to 77, there was always the same party that like was governing the state, and in 77 there was a shift between like left wing to right wing. It is the first time it was like this guy, he was like 20 years in the opposition and like he never gave up. At the end he did it. He may become because of the Yom Kippur failure that so many people died. So like they say, okay, they're not good anymore. Let's change it up, And then they changed it to this guy. And 2 years later, he made the first. Israeli-Arab peace agreement between Egypt and Israel, which is remarkable because the Egypt and Israel, they were the biggest enemies because Egypt was really the leader of the coalition against Israel. And this was a remarkable achievement. So we gave them back Sinai Peninsula and in exchange for peace. We said, if you want to take Gaza, and they said, no, keep it to yourself. We don't want it. Because they knew that Gaza will only bring them trouble. And this is also an interesting fact, because when you hear in the global news that like Israel is, and it is true, but like in Israel do a blockade on Gaza, so it's not only us doing a blockade, it's also Egypt doing a blockade, because Gaza has two borders. So like it's a square, okay? One side of the square, not a square, like a rectangle. So one side of the rectangle is for the sea. Two sides is in Israel, and the third side, the last one, is in Egypt. So they're also doing a blockade on them. And the thing is that the Gazans know not to go to the Egypt border and do protest because in Egypt they put like ex-prisoners on fucking machine guns, and if you get close to the border, you get shot on, they don't play games, don't do shit. And you don't hear about this stuff because, But this is what, like, they didn't want Gaza back, and I know it's gonna be trouble for them. And then there was another war at 82. It was with Lebanon, and actually my father fought in this war.
Whoa.
Yeah. And after 82, there was 87. This was really the shift. It's called the first Intifada. Intifada means uprising in Arabic. and it started with something horrific. Like, two Israelis went into like an Arab village in the West Bank, and they got into a wrong house, and like once the entire village knew that Israelis are there, so like they surrounded the entire house, and and then they got in, just massacred them. And then there's like a famous picture of like, you see like an Arab guy with bloods on his hand and going on the window and say like, we got him, we murdered them. And then started like an uprising and like civil rights, not civil rights, like civil war between like Palestinians, and Israelis. But in the end, it wasn't that bad. But this is like started to crack between like the Israelis and the Palestinians. In 1992, I believe, but I'm not sure, there was another peace agreement between Israel and an Arab country, with Jordan. And it's funny because the prime minister who did this peace agreement, he was the general in the 6-day war who liberated Jerusalem from Jordan, So it was like really, a lot of stuff is like poetic, So he did this, and after a few years he did the Oslo Accords. The Oslo Accords this is what the PLO that we know today. When you say about the Palestinian Authority and like the Palestinian Territory and like Ramallah and all that stuff, so this happened in the Abraham Accords. This happened in the Oslo Accords between Yasser Arafat and Yitzhak Rabin. Yitzhak Rabin was our prime minister, was the general, and blah blah blah. And Yasser Arafat was their leader. There was a really, really big... it divided the country very, very much. Right-wing people said you can't trust the Arabs, you can't trust the Palestinians, never give them land, never give them any opportunity, because this rule said like they can want to have their own like kind of like police force and military, and like we supplied them with guns, and so like, are we crazy? Are we gonna supply our enemy with guns and blah blah blah? And the other side of the map said that it's finally their time, to make peace, because this is like the most important thing. What is this whole country is worse if we don't have peace with our neighbors? So like it really clashed the country, and it was like really hit politically wise. And then it was in 1993, and then it was like couples. There was like Oslo Accords 1 and then 2, and then the second one was supposed to like continue this process. So this prime minister got assassinated by an extreme right-winger. He killed him. And then it wasn't the same anymore, but the Palestinian Authority did came up to life, and this is also like really big tear in Israeli society. Like the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin is like a really big thing. And like it's still till today that, and also it's funny because Benjamin Netanyahu, see how old he is, but like Benjamin Netanyahu, he was his rival, like political rival, when he got assassinated. It was 1995. It's 2023, and he's still prime minister today, and he always like win democratically. So it's just crazy, And then in the year 2000, there was the second Intifada, and the second Intifada was really something that like we lost a lot of trust in the Palestinians as Israelis. It was a horrific time to be in Israel. There was buses exploding everywhere. Just like buses exploding, a lot of suicidal terrorists, with like the bomb and like on their chest and everything. It's like more than like 1,000 Israeli died, and like it was just horrible, And after this, so in 2003, we went to do an operation in the West Bank with like tanks in the West Bank. It was really hardcore to like get rid of like Arafat, the PLO leader, because of all this stuff. And it didn't work out. Like we did the operation, but we didn't kill him. And later, but because of this, so this is the founding thing of like when you see today all like the big sad borders, the borders with the... Wait a second, I'm gonna... Wait. So like when you see the borders today, like when you see on Vox, on BBC or whatever, like you see this sad gray walls and tons of checkpoints and all that stuff. It wasn't always the case. So like these people need to remember, we didn't like just the first day, we just put them in a ghetto, It just, after the Intifada, there wasn't any like physical border, And people just came from the West Bank with AK-47s and bombs and whatever, come into Israel and just explode buses in Tel Aviv, in Yafo, in Jerusalem, like everywhere, So like after this, we said, okay, we can't trust them. We have to put walls, We have to do checkpoints, because if they want, an Intifada will come back again, This is why it happened. It's not just because one day we said, let's fuck them, let's put them in walls, in a zoo. And then in 2005, there was something like really hardcore. It's called Ha'itnatkut. It's mean like let's see. I want to see. The Israel disengagement operation. We said to the Palestinians in Gaza, we told them, okay, you want your independence? Fine, no problems. We're gonna take all the Jewish people, all the Israelis, all the army who's there, unilaterally, like one-sided, we're just gonna withdraw everything back to Israel, and you're gonna get your state, you're gonna be the next Singapore of the Middle East, so cool, so fun, blah, 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 something like this. Then they had an election. And between themselves, so the Palestinians themselves are divided between the PLO and Hamas. And it's the way of like how we gonna achieve our goal to make a Palestinian state. The PLO started with terrorism, but today it's like more diplomatical and like using the UN and like the International Court in the Netherlands. Like they're using more like diplomatics and sanctions and like this direction. And you have Hamas, which they believe only with armed force we can take the Israelites. And Hamas is in Gaza and the PLO is in the West Bank. And Hamas, so like they had between themselves, they had an election and they voted for the Hamas. And after there was like a civil war between the Hamas and PLO people. At the end, you can look it up online. You can see the Hamas people throw the PLO people from the building. You can just see something crazy. After this, Hamas really conquered the place and become what we know today, like as a terror organization, was just awful. And ever since, so like we usually fight. So ever since 2005. We have the rocket issues from the Gaza Strip. It didn't used to be like this. So with all this history, so there's two things you need to you ask yourself. You have two examples of what happened when you give your enemy land. You have first of all the one I told you in Egypt. Egypt was the leader of the coalition against Israel, and today they are our biggest ally in the Middle East. We have 40 years of good, it's called peace, but this is what you need in the Middle East. You don't need a peace like French and Germany, they just skip borders, fuck this shit, you don't need it. You just need not to be in a war with your neighbor, and you have to have a relationship with him. So Egypt is our best one yet. And we gave land back, we gave Sinai Peninsula back, and Sinai Peninsula is also important to Judaism because this is where Moses, with the tablets, this is where it happened. So we gave it back and there was peace ever since. But the other ones, we gave land to the Palestinians in Gaza and it turned out to be like a terror organization country. And then when you look up ahead, you said, okay, we're going to give them the West Bank, what will happen? Will it be Egypt or will it be Gaza? And it's a big risk to take, don't know the answer to. And also the thing is that you don't know the answer to is Palestinians themselves, from what I know, but I have evidence for it, they don't want this two-state solution because they don't interested in only in the West Bank. They themselves look at the 48, like the founding of Israel, the problem part. They don't see the legitimacy of the Jews and the Israelites to come to Israel at all. They just look at it as another colonial, European colonialism that came and took their land, you know? If you go to Palestine, you will see they have still keys of their houses in Yafo or in, in Akko or wherever, you know? And they call it the 48, the Nakba, and they call 67 the Naksa. I don't remember what the Naksa means, but the Nakba means the catastrophe. Something similar to the Holocaust. This is like every year they're doing like a ceremony to remember and like a memorial day for what happened. And think about it, this is our Independence Day. So like for us, the most happiest days, like national happiest days in Israel, it's their saddest day of their nationality. So this is why it's so problematic to like make the difference here, you know? Because we're just looking from the completely other side. But you need to remember that like both people have legitimacy here, you know? It's not only one side. Even if Israelis think that they don't have, they do have. They've been here, living here for like hundreds of years, you know? And even if they didn't do, like a country that's still been here. But on the other hand, they need to figure out that like this place is special to us. It's not just like we made it up, you know? You can find archaeological thing like archaeological temples and scriptures and like, I don't know, so many things that related to Judaism, you know? And like it's thousands of years old, like 3,000 years old. So like our roots are here, you know? So we need to find a way to make it fine. But the thing is, I really don't see anything right now that will come into the solution.
Thanks for joining Idan and me today in the Room of Lives. In the next part of our conversation, Idan shares his experiences of backpacking through Southeast Asia, including India, and the life lessons on communication, perspective, challenges, and loneliness that he has learned from all his traveling.